Welcome back to the show for our second segment here, and we've got the RKJ Man in the house. How we doing?
I'm good, brother. I'm good.
All right. He's got his Panthers hat on.
Let's get ready, man. I've been quiet all morning just so I could get to this.
He's a big talker.
Yeah.
He's got a mouth like 7-Eleven, never closes.
Never closes, man. Never closes, but you always come in at the end of the night. You always come in. When you're drunk, you need something to eat or something to drink, you come into 7-Eleven.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, I didn't know he was going to take it that far, but everyone, welcome Ryan to the show. Ryan obviously is a big, huge Carolina Panthers fan. He's been talking a lot of noise all offseason. He's been all over social media about his Panthers, giving me crap, saying that they're going to whip my Cowboys. And fortunately, we have a Week 1 matchup with the Cowboys traveling to Carolina to play his Panthers.
And as soon as I saw that, I remember just being in the car. I was randomly at Walmart. I look at my phone and I see that this is the first game, and all I could think of is I've got to get on this podcast to go up against Jarrett. I have to get me some Jarrett for Week 1.
Well, listen, like I've said, the door is always open. We welcome anyone to come onto the show and debate. We love debate, whether it's good, bad, or in between. So let's get right into it. Let's give a little background first of how you became a Carolina Panthers fan, because that's still a little iffy to me.
I've always been a Carolina Panther fan, barring the terrible 1-15 season we had back in 2001. But I've always been a Carolina Panther fan since I was about 6 years old. Even earlier than that, I remember watching Carolina Panthers games with my dad. And to be honest, my fondest memories growing up was going to church on Sunday, praying to God the pastor would hurry up and finish. That way I can get home and watch the Carolina Panthers just like I will be doing this Sunday.
Well, luckily it's a 1 o'clock game, so you can get to church on 10 o'clock.
Yeah, so I can get to church at 10 o'clock, but you don't understand how Southern churches work, Jarrett. So Southern churches is 3 hours.
Half my family's from the South.
Yeah,
I know
so
what you mean.
3 hours long, and you're just praying to God that the pastor can just hurry up and finish. So I've been a fan for that long, and, really, honestly, the Carolina Panthers and football in general and sports in general have always held a special place in my heart. But it really got personal when I moved out here to California. Me and my brother, we would have football Sundays. And football Sundays were just a day where we just would stop at whatever we were doing and we would just watch football for the whole day. And, ever since Cam Newton has come on, he's really elevated the Panthers and put the Panthers in that spotlight. I remember going, as a matter of fact, being 10 years old, going back to my childhood, though, when I was a Carolina Panthers fan, just crying, just bawling when we got beat by the Patriots. And the same thing happened a few years ago. So, yeah, I've been a Carolina Panthers fan all my life. And, some people, and it's really weird because where I grew up in Charlotte, there's a lot of Cowboys fans, there's a lot of Washington Redskins fans, because the Redskins used to get played on television all the time before the Carolina Panthers became a franchise. And they're still there. So it's going to be entertaining to see how many Cowboys fans are at Bank of America this weekend, because the game is played in Charlotte.
Cowboys fans do travel well.
They travel well, and they're everywhere. They're everywhere, and there's a lot of them in Charlotte. So we're going to see how much they show up at Bank of America this week. I'm looking
that was
going
to be my question. I wasn't sure if you were from Charlotte, if that was...
I am from Charlotte.
Okay.
I'm straight from Charlotte.
Then that makes sense why you would be a Panthers fan.
Yeah, I grew up, and I lived not too far away from the stadium, so that was always fun hearing the roars of the crowd. So
all right, well,
great.
Enough of being nice to you. I gave you a little segment to kind of, introduce yourself to everyone and get acclimated. And now it's time to get down to business. So
let's talk that
Week
talk,
1,
bro.
Cowboys traveling to Bank of America Stadium to play the Panthers. I see you got a lot of notes over there.
I have a ton of notes.
It looks like a lot of gibberish to me.
Man, you crazy. You're
okay.
crazy.
Okay.
See, I get it. You guys are 9-4 against us, right? You're 9-4. You've got the record.
Oh, no, I don't care about the record.
But we've beaten you guys in all big games. And what are those big games? 2003. NFC wildcard game, we beat you guys. 1997, a divisional game, we beat you guys. But let's talk about a few years ago when we destroyed Tony Romo, ended his career, and beat you guys on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
The formula is simple. It's running the football with Christian McCaffrey and using the play-action passing game to Cam Newton's advantage. I think now that we have a new offensive coordinator in Norv Turner, we have the ability to actually utilize Christian McCaffrey in open space, which is what he did for LaDainian Tomlinson and Emmitt Smith. So if you look at that, I think Christian McCaffrey is going to have a big game this week, and I think he's going to have even a bigger year this year, Plus, he's bulked up a lot. We talked about it in the break. He's bulked up a lot. I have to think they've told him you're going to get a lot of carries this year. And as a matter of fact, Ron Rivera confirmed that this week when he said he wants to do 25 to 30 touches per game for Christian McCaffrey. So, at the end of the day, I think a lot of Christian McCaffrey, a lot of play-action passes. I know our offensive line is struggling, but it's not as bad as the Dallas Cowboys, man. Your Cowboys' offensive line is butter. I'm telling you, I've got notes over here. Let's look at what's going on here. Zach Martin injured with the knee. Travis Frederick illness. Laurel Collins limping at practice. Tyron Smith, as far as I know, I haven't looked at this morning, missed 2 practices for a back injury. I think all of these are huge problems for the Dallas Cowboys that you're just laughing at. And this is what I love about you Cowboys fans, man. Y'all just laugh over these simple problems, and then when it actually gets to game time in the year and these problems come up, you're like, oh, okay. All right, now we see how the problem is. Now we see it was an issue. But it's too late by that point, because at that point you're 8-8 and you're trailing everybody else in your division. So I think at the end of the day, you need to address this to me and tell me how Ezekiel Elliott can run the football with a banged-up offensive line, and then how Dak Prescott can use the play-action pass. We were talking a little bit about it. I don't expect Dak Prescott to be a 50 pass attempt per game type of guy. He's not Tom Brady. But what I do expect Dak Prescott to do is to utilize the play-action game with bootlegs and screens and whatnot, because Ezekiel Elliott is running that football so well, to be able to get open plays for his wide receivers. Unfortunately, Dak Prescott's not going to have that if he doesn't have a running game. And we know Dak Prescott can't really do it by himself. Tell me, Mr. Jared Smith, how in the world do you expect to beat us with a banged-up offensive line, a running back who can't run with an offensive line, and a quarterback who can't throw, period? Tell me.
I wish you were on the show every single week. I would have a field day with you every single week. You know what I feel like right now? I feel like Stephen A. Smith, when he's just sitting there and he's letting the other person talk, and he just knows. He's just getting boiled up and he's ready. Okay, I actually agree with what you said about your Panthers as far as Christian McCaffrey getting the ball. I feel like he's a dynamic threat. He's going to get a lot more touches this year. Like you mentioned, he bulked up in the offseason. He looked huge. I think that's totally true. I think the bad thing for them is their other kind of dynamic receiver / running back, Curtis Samuel, is more than likely going to be out for week 1.
Yeah, because of a heart issue.
Right. So I'm hoping that he comes back from that. That seems, every time or anytime you think about a heart issue, that seems pretty serious. So hopefully from a health standpoint, he can get better and then hopefully come back in week 2 or 3 or something like that.
I just want him to get healthy, to be honest with you.
Cam Newton is kind of, he's Superman. He's almost like the LeBron James of the NFL as far as his how tall he is, his athleticism for a quarterback. He can make all the throws when he uses proper technique, in my opinion. I think the problem is sometimes because they haven't had a consistent offensive line throughout Cam Newton's career with the Panthers, that he has to take over and sometimes do too much, right? And he has to kind of force the ball into tight windows. He's got to throw off of his back foot. And for as great of a player as he is, listen, in the NFL, that's not gonna bode you well. This isn't college anymore, right? So I think I do like the addition of Norv Turner, their offensive coordinator. He's obviously been in the league for years, worked with almost every single team in the league. So
not to mention the Cowboys.
Right, he did work with the Cowboys. So I feel that Norv Turner can put Cam Newton in the right situations for him to succeed. And I actually think Cam Newton's going to have a really, really good game. The Cowboys have, in my opinion, a good defense. I think they're going to surprise some people, but they don't have the defense that the Jaguars do or the Denver Broncos do. They're not like an elite defense. So Cam Newton's going to be able to spread the ball around. I think he's going to be able to do really, really good things. The problem is, the question is, will he be able to keep his technique? If Cam Newton stays, on his feet and throws off of his front foot and sees windows and sees openings, I think he can have a field day. If he starts to get flustered, if he starts throwing off his back foot, if he thinks he can run and be a scrambler and not use his other outside weapons, I think that's where, as a complete offense, where things will start to slide for them. That's talking about the Panthers, right? Going to my Cowboys.
I was waiting for something, because so far you ain't doing nothing to surprise me.
Oh no!
So far, you haven't surprised me.
I'm trying to let you.
Okay.
I'm trying to let you. I'm trying to say something good about the Panthers.
You're trying to. Okay. All right.
When you call the Dallas Cowboys offensive line butter,
because they are right now.
Are you high?
No, I'm
not. Sure?
I'm
are
not.
You sure? Okay.
Let me explain something.
No. You have the mic for a minute.
Okay. When you don't have an offensive line.
Okay. Zach Martin hyperextended his knee in the second preseason game. That is, it looked like almost a torn ACL. He was down for a couple minutes. They went back and took x-rays and MRI and all that stuff. Came back with a hyperextension. He did miss a week. He's been back for 2 weeks now. So he's not 100%. I completely agree with that. But he's 90% probably. 90% of Zach Martin, an all-pro and a Pro Bowler in every single year since he's been in the NFL, one of the best guards. I will take him at 90% over almost any other guard in the NFL. Lyle Collins has an ankle injury. It's a low ankle. It's not a high ankle sprain. Everyone knows that high ankle sprains are a lot worse. So it's a low ankle sprain. He's been practicing. He hasn't missed any practice. So he might not be 100% either, but he's still practicing. It's not like he's sitting out and he's like, oh, I got to shoot me up to get me out to the game. He's in there. Tyron Smith, yes, he has been known to have back injuries in basically almost every year of his career so far. It's a preventative thing with him. The Cowboys are purposely holding him out of most practices up until like the day or two before the game week because they don't want him to kind of flare up and or re-aggravate. So it's more of a preventative situation as opposed to he actually has a current back problem that's ailing him right now, right? So they just want to make sure that on game day he feels as good as possible. So your points, I know you're smirking over it and you think they were valid. None of those are actually true because, yes, the Cowboys may be quote-unquote banged up a little bit, but all those guys that you mentioned except for Travis Frederick are going to play. So, in my opinion, yes, they are losing their all-pro center in Travis Frederick. One of the best centers in the league, just got paid by the Cowboys, well-deserved. That's a big loss for them, and that's more of a health concern with a disease. So he has to get healthy with that first before he can even think about football. That is the one and only concern that I have with this Cowboys offensive line. Their backup center, however, Joe Looney, has been with this team and with his offensive system for 4 years, and he has come in and spot duty. So I feel that he is adequate enough to come in and play well. He's obviously not a Pro Bowler. I'm not trying to hype him up too much. He can come in and get the job done, right? So the Cowboys are going to have 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen out there, right? I'm okay with that. Ezekiel Elliott is a good enough running back that he can run between your crappy offensive line. He doesn't need the good offensive line of the Cowboys to run the ball. He's that good of a running back. You guys haven't had a good running back like that, so you don't know what it's like for a guy with that much talent to be able to run with the lesser talent of an offensive line, right? I agree with you. Dak Prescott is not a Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, a guy that wants to sit back and throw the ball 50 times. That's not what he's going to do. He's going to run play action. They're going to use Ezekiel Elliott as much as he can, and without having Des Bryant and or Jason Witten there, the ball's going to be spread around. Whether Cole Beasley gets 5 targets, Allen Hurns, their one of their draft picks this year, Michael Gallup, they're all going to see targets, and that's what I think the Cowboys want this year. The Cowboys want to be unpredictable. They don't want teams coming in knowing who's going to throw or where the ball is going to be going. So one game if Cole Beasley gets 8 targets and then the next game he only gets 2, that's just the way it is. I'm not saying I completely like it because I would love for them to have better weapons and more of a consistent guy that Dak Prescott can throw the ball to, like a Jason Witten throughout his career. But I think they're going to lean heavily on the offensive line, running the ball, controlling the clock, and when the defense is on the field, 3 and outs and get them off the field. I think that's their strategy. If they come out and throw the ball 50 times a game, I agree with you. I don't think they're going to win too many games. So I think they have a good strategy. I think you're way over-exaggerating the Cowboys' injuries right now, other than their center. I think everywhere else is minor injuries that you just play through. That's part of the NFL. There's a difference between being hurt and injured. If you're hurt, you tape it up, you go out there and you play. There's no excuses. You're injured, that's a whole other thing. You don't play. So I think you're saying the Cowboys' offensive line is injured. In my opinion, a guy that follows them a little bit more, I think they're just hurt, slightly hurt, and they're going to be ready to go game 1.
I think you guys have legitimate problems on your offensive line when 4 out of 5 starters are not practicing because you can't find actual cohesion. So cohesion is a big part in the offensive line.
I agree.
If you guys aren't practicing together, how are you going to translate that over to games? That's the problem that I'm having right now with you guys, is because you don't have a cohesive unit in the staff enough. And everybody in Dallas agrees that the offensive line is a concern. And if the offensive line isn't going, then everything else just tumbles down. So I don't think at the end of the day, these guys, all it takes is for one of our defensive linemen in a pile is to just roll over one of these guys, and all of a sudden the bodies start falling down. And I look at your depth chart, and your depth chart isn't very good. I'm not very confident in your offensive line after this. So you better hope that somebody doesn't accidentally, Jared, roll over one of you guys' ankles or do something. Because it happens. It happens in the NFL.
Okay, why are you saying accidentally in quotes? Are you like trying to accuse one of your Carolina Panthers of being dirty?
I'm not trying to accuse anybody of being dirty. All I'm saying, this is the National Football League, and we all know that when there's a big target on the field, in terms of if we see that, if, guys read the injury report too. So if I see that you have a knee injury or something like that, I'm going to find a way to test that knee some way, somehow in this game and see if it's really up to par. So I don't really feel confident going into a game with the offensive line who has who's not cohesive enough and who's not 100%. I want a 100% offensive line. I want a line that's been together all throughout the offseason, all throughout practice, all throughout training camp, and you don't have that right now. You're not going to have it guaranteed going into this Sunday. You're not going to have that. And then also, let's talk a little bit about North Turner. Oh, excuse me, hold on. I need to bring up one more thing. You guys added Chris Richard. I really like him. He's a great defensive coach, great defensive mind. The only issue is the Carolina Panthers and the Seattle Seahawks have been battling for years. So Cam Newton is going to see everything that Chris Richard is going to have coming to him. We're going to be able to adjust easily in that game. Cam Newton can adjust like this in his mindset when it comes to Chris Richard.
As he should.
He should be able to adjust without...
As a $100 million quarterback, I hope he would be able to do that.
He should be able to adjust, but it's a little bit different when you've been seeing the same defensive players all your career. And I think you guys are going to try to lean back towards that Legion of Boom thing. And that Legion of Boom thing hasn't been working for a few years. You guys, they've had issues with their running back, with having to deal with running backs. They've had issues with athletic quarterbacks. They've had issues with the running game. So I think those same problems could creep up into Dallas if Chris Richards tries to bring his philosophy that he had in Seattle to Dallas. Also, let's look at the fact that North Turner has greatly improved all his quarterbacks that he's worked with. Phillip Rivers and Troy Aikman. I have this stat about Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman, when North Turner was there from 1991 to 1993 as an offensive coordinator, at one point had 23 touchdowns. That was his season high. Now, obviously, the NFL is a little bit different back then. And then he also had about a 69% completion rating. So when I'm expecting North Turner to tell Cam Newton what he's already told Cam Newton is to, hey, it's okay to dink and dunk every now and then, Cam. It's okay to dink and dunk, and you've seen it a little bit in the preseason. We haven't been afraid to dink it and dunk it down with Christian McCaffrey. And there's also another guy that we haven't mentioned, and his name is Daryl Moore. Daryl Moore just got drafted by us in the offseason.
Oh, you mean the guy that just got busted for going like 115 down the freeway?
Well, he got busted by 115 because he's got a new car. I mean, if you got a BMW, you got a BMW. Okay. Come on, like you got a BMW. Why wouldn't you want to do it? He probably had a hot chick in the car too. So whatever. But anyway, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, Daryl Moore was brought in to be that next guy. He's brought in to be the next Steve Smith, and Steve Smith said it when we drafted him. They haven't been able to replace anybody since I left till today, and that day was the day they drafted Daryl Moore. Expect Daryl Moore to be used a lot in the play-action deep game, and then Devin Funchess will be that possessional wide receiver. At the end of the day, I don't think the Cowboys can handle what we're going to bring at them from an offensive standpoint, and it's going to be so much that the defense is just going to be playing catch-up, that your offense is going to be playing catch-up, which is going to force you guys to have to throw the football more, which is going to force the offensive line to pass protect more, which is going to put a lot more pressure on those guys and their injuries to kind of hold up. I don't think it's going to happen. I think at the end of the day, the Carolina Panthers are winning this game 34-20.
Man, 34-20.
34-20.
Woo!
I think we're coming into Bank of America with a point to prove. I mean, if you look at it, the Panthers have always gone under the radar. And it's mostly because of us being in our location. We've never been that sexy team. You know, Charlotte, North Carolina is in that sexy place. I mean, even I moved from Charlotte. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, the Carolina Panthers have always been there in the NFC. They've always had the chance. And a few years ago, we were the top team in the NFC and came very close to winning a Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I don't think we're that far off. We weren't that far off in beating the Saints in 2 out of the 3 games last year. We're not that far off. I think we've surpassed Tampa Bay. We've surpassed the Atlanta Falcons. We can win that division. I think we can win that division, honestly. I think we can win that division. That's my opinion. I think we'll win the division.
Woo! Some Homer talk going on right now.
It's not Homer talk. It's not Homer talk. I'm very critical of Cam.
Going back to your Chris Richards point, I really, really do like that pick. where I do disagree with you, Chris Richards technically is only the secondary coach. So Rob Marinelli, is still the defensive coordinator.
Did I say he was the defensive coordinator?
No, I'm not saying that you did.
My bad.
I'm not saying that you did. I'm just saying Chris Richards will have his handprints on the secondary, but Rob Marinelli still calls the defense. So he's still going to call the defense as he sees fit. Now, do I see Chris Richards eventually taking over as defensive coordinator? Because Rob Marinelli's like 7 years old and he's limping on one leg. In a couple of years, he's going to take over. But he still doesn't have full control right now. So I don't think they're bringing the full Legion of Boom over. And it's not because Chris Richards doesn't want to. I think that's because the NFL has taken some of those decisions away from those coaches. The NFL is just a different game than it was even 5 years ago. So players can't be as physical. You can't be as handsy. You can't do certain things from a defensive standpoint that you used to be able to do. So unfortunately, I don't think that's Chris Richards' fault. I think that's just the NFL saying we want more of an offensive game. We want less injuries, all that type of stuff. So I think Chris Richards has had to change his coaching philosophy in the way that he tells his players to play. I think the Cowboys secondary, their corners are underrated. I think their safety spot is a position of weakness. Their corners with Byron Jones, a very long, lengthy guy out of Connecticut. He started out as a safety for the Cowboys his first 3 years, and then Chris Richards transitioned him to a corner. And then they have Chidobe Awuzie, a guy who they drafted in the second round last year, who I think is going to come out and be a stud this year. So from their corner standpoint, I think they are very, very solid. Plus, I think they have good depth with Jordan Lewis and Brown and Anthony Brown in their slot. Their safeties are where I have a little bit of an issue as far as with the deep ball, play action, all that stuff. Can they sit there and take away that deep threat? I'm not so sure that they can. I do like the pick of DJ Moore, even though I just kind of hassled him for a little bit for getting that speeding ticket. He is kind of a deep threat coming out of Maryland. He's got the Cam Newton. He literally just chucked the ball down the field, and DJ Moore, if he's doing his thing, can beat almost any corner and get to the end zone. So I think that's the one deep threat that you guys have lacked since Ted Ginn Jr. I think Ted Ginn was able to kind of gel a little bit with Cam, but Cam hasn't really had that since then. So no, there's no doubt that you guys have weapons. I'm just not so sure from an offensive standpoint that you guys will be able to put it all together. Let's also remember, this is week 1, right? So you're coming off the preseason where Cam Newton didn't play a whole lot. And this isn't even for the Panthers. This is for every single team in the league. Most starting units have not played together. So you want to talk about cohesiveness. Most units, whether it's a couple guys, whether it's an offensive line or your starting running back or whatever the case may be, have not played together for a long period of time. So typically the first game of the season, and especially the first quarter, is kind of a feel out process. Okay, how are our guys going to respond? What other looks are we going to get from the opponent, right? So I think the game could be a little shaky at first until that second quarter and even the second half when things have settled down a little bit. And you want to talk about cohesiveness with the Cowboys offensive line. You are correct that in this offseason, insofar in the preseason, their starters have not been able to play together because of injury. But these starters, 4 out of the 5, with the exception of their left guard position, have played together for the last 4 years consecutively. So I'm okay with them not, playing together in the preseason, missing some time because of injury, because of the cohesiveness that they have had in the past 4 seasons. I get that this is a new year and things change, but those guys know each other. They know what they need to do. They know their assignments. They've been in the same offensive system for the last 5 years, so it's not like that has changed at all. So I don't want to sit here, or I don't want to hear about, they need to sit here and play together and blah, blah, blah. They all know each other. They know how to play together. They know how to pick up blocking schemes and all that stuff. They need to get out on the field, and when Ezekiel Elliott is running the ball down the throat of the Carolina Panthers defense, let's talk. Kawan Short, Luke Kuechly, the only 2 defenders on the Carolina Panthers that I would be worried about if I'm the Cowboys. I'm not worried about the Panthers secondary.
Of course you don't talk about Shaq Thompson, a much younger Thomas Davis, a guy who can move a little bit better than Thomas.
He runs sideline to sideline. He's a fast running back.
Of course you don't talk about James Bradberry.
No,
James Bradberry. James Bradberry is one of the best cornerbacks in the league. James Bradberry, look up his stats, bro. Look at what James Bradberry was doing. He was shutting down wide receivers last year. I love how you just laugh because you don't have an actual rebuttal towards it.
He wears number 24 just like Josh Norman. But Josh Norman's in Washington, so you must be getting those 24s confused.
I'm not getting confused.
If you're saying that James Bradberry is one of the best corners in the league,
is a shutdown corner. Go look up his stats on Pro Football. Go look up his stats. James Bradbury was a shutdown corner last year.
You're killing me right
man.
now.
They had to put the number one receiver on the other side of the field, and he's no longer there. That cornerback that they dominated against is no longer there with us.
You're killing me.
He's no longer there with us.
No, it's
crazy,
okay.
man.
It's okay.
Let's talk a little bit about. Hold on. Let's talk a little bit about the tight end
situation.
situation.
How much time do you have left in this segment?
Man, we got as much time as we want to. Man, this is not the regen. This is the cover two. This is the cover two podcast.
We got 5 minutes.
But yeah, 5 minutes. All right, look here. Let's talk a little bit about your tight end situation. What's up with your tight end get suspended for weed or getting caught for weed?
Right. No, I think he's dumb. I wish the Cowboys would have cut him. I wasn't a big fan of him. He is a basketball player out of Baylor, and he didn't play football most of his high school or college career. So he was more of a project that the Cowboys were trying to develop. And when he goes up against the second and third string teams in the preseason, he looks good. He's not as fast. He's more of just a guy that you throw the ball up to, and because he's 6'6" and 280 pounds, he can catch the ball. But I especially with him getting busted for marijuana the day before roster cuts, I feel that he should have been cut, and the Cowboys could have used his slot for another player on the team. So, no, I agree. I think the tight end spot is probably the biggest weakness on their team with the loss of Jason Witten. They have Jeff Swain, who's been with the team for 3 years. He's an average tight end. There's really nothing special about him. They drafted Dalton Schultz from Stanford, who's kind of a blocking tight end. We all know the Cowboys like to have extra tight ends to block for Ezekiel Elliott, so I think that's going to be him. And they also have Blake Jarwin, who's, I would say, probably the best receiving tight end that they have, but he's not a household name either. So I agree. I'm a little worried about the Cowboys tight ends, but I don't think that the Cowboys are going to use their tight ends like they would have if Jason Witten were here. They're going to have to come up with different ways to scheme. They're going to use Ezekiel Elliott out of the backfield to catch the ball a little bit more. I think that's going to take some touches away from the tight end spot. And they're just going to have to use their receivers more. So if you're trying to sit here and tell me that the Cowboys tight ends aren't that good, you can save your breath, because I'm right there with you. I don't think that they are a good unit at all.
See, I always have a plan up my sleeve. The reason why I brought up the tight end situation is because North Turner's always succeeded with tight ends. He's had Antonio Gates, and I think Greg Olson's going to play a critical part in this week's game and for the rest of the season. And when it comes to you guys and your tight end situation, let's say one of those offensive linemen goes down, or two. You're going to have to keep a tight end to at least pass protect or run block in certain cases. So in that case, guess what? That's an extra target getting taken away from Dak Prescott too. So that's a concern too. It's something that I would think a little bit more about going into this game.
Can I say one thing?
What?
Throughout this whole segment, you said a lot of ifs. You're saying a lot of ifs. If the Cowboys' offensive lineman goes down, if they have to bring in another tight end.
Because if turn into most likely.
Oh, really?
If turns into most likely, and then it turns into all of a sudden it happens.
No, I understand.
If turns
I understand
into
being proactive and having to have a backup plan and even a backup plan. I totally get that. Ifs don't apply to right now. We're talking about who's going to strap it up, who's going to line up on the field, and who's going to start the game and play for both of these teams, right? So this whole if scenario of if and when an offensive lineman gets injured and when the Cowboys have to change things around, there's a plan for that in place, but you worry about that when that happens. I'm talking about right now, who is going to win this game with the starters on the field? Right
now, I don't think you're a better team than us, period.
Okay.
I can actively go out on a limb and say, you're not a better team than us.
From the record from last year, I would agree with you because the Panthers had a better record than the Cowboys last year. I think the Cowboys have better depth all around as a unit, as a team, offensively and defensively. Like I said, their defense is a little underrated. Obviously, we know the Carolina Panthers defense, at least their front seven, in my opinion, is very, very stout. I think their secondary has a little bit of issues. But I think the Cowboys as a whole, with their philosophy and the way that they do things with running the ball, play action, giving Dak Prescott good, easy throws and good reads, I think they're not unstoppable, but I think they can basically play at will and do what they need to do to get the job done. I don't see many 3-and-outs going on, and I see them controlling the clock, keeping the other team's quarterback, in this case Cam Newton, off the field. So I think it's going to be a closer game than what you said of 34-20. I'm going to go like 27-21, right? I think it'll be in the 20s. I think both teams are going to be able to score, but I do think it's going to be a little bit closer. But I see the Cowboys kind of edging one out at home or on the road.
So we're homers to the end, aren't we?
I mean, we're homers, but yeah,
that's what it is, you know. But you know, Jared, not only am I the RKJ Man, but I've established another nickname. You ever heard of Nostradamus?
No.
I'm Blackstradamus.
Oh gosh.
I'm Blackstradamus.
This is not true.
This week,
He gets a lot of things wrong.
this week, I'm gonna prove to you why I'm right. I'm gonna prove to you why I'm right. This week, my team is gonna prove to you why I'm right, and I can't wait. Maybe I'll have to come on Cover 2 podcast next week.
I hope so. I hope you come back every week because I can blast you just like I did today.
No, you didn't. You didn't blast me today.
It's okay.
You didn't blast me today.
It's okay. All of your stats, all of your ifs, ands, and whats.
There is. Guess what? Those ifs are going to turn into real legitimate concerns for you guys. I guarantee it. I guarantee at some point your offensive line is going to crumble. Maybe not in this game, but throughout the season, your offensive line is going to crumble.
Are we talking about the season or are we talking about this one game?
We're talking about both now.
We're talking about both.
We're talking about we were talking about both too. I guarantee you, it might not happen in this game. But it will happen at some point this season. Your offensive line will crumble, Jared. And you'll come in here, and I'll come in here one day, and I'll be like, hey, Jared, remember what I told you on September 5th? And you'll be like, yeah, Ryan, you were right. Blackstradamus was right.
I will never say Blackstradamus was right.
Will.
I might say Ryan was right, but I ain't ever going to call you by that name again.
Yeah.
Nick.
You know, I gotta get some say in here, because this has been a great segment. And Ryan's coming here with his notes. By the way, his notes say Ryan versus Jared on his notes.
I know.
Just to let you guys know what's going on.
I have to be very specific.
But great analysis from both you guys.
And Nick didn't think I was even going to come in here with any stats or anything.
No, I didn't. That was good. No, I gave him a lot of crap because he tends to just kind of go off the top of his head. And I'm like, Jared's going to be prepared. You got to be. So you were very prepared. It was good, very good.